let's jump right into it. We're about to break down the upcoming pattern, and you'll want to stick around for this. We're looking at a major polar vortex event that's expected to hit later this month and into December, where things are about to get absolutely wild. I'm talking brutally cold temperatures and some serious snowfall potential. We're already seeing a couple of major cooldowns showing up on the models for the end of the month, and we're going to dive into that, plus the potential for a massive snowstorm over the central and eastern United States, maybe even a couple of them. So yeah, we've got a ton to unpack today. Let's get right to it. First things first, let's take a look at what's happening right now, where we have 3 stormy regions in play, 2 major systems, and one that's a bit on the smaller side. We'll kick things off out here in the southwest, where a storm system is making its way ashore, and down in Southern California, we're seeing some pretty heavy precipitation. This is starting to spark some serious flash flood discussions all over the place. And you have to remember, these are areas that are normally super dry. When they're dealing with heavy rainfall, think about it. If you take bone-dry dirt and try to add water to it, that dirt doesn't just soak it up right away, right? It takes some time, and that's exactly what we're seeing take place here in Southern California. As a low-pressure system moves inland, it's dumping incredibly heavy rain. This is definitely a big flooding concern down there. Now, as we shift our focus up towards the northern Rockies actually, more like the northern plains in eastern Montana and into the Dakotas, we have mixed precipitation showers ongoing. I'm talking brutally cold temperatures and some serious snowfall potential. We're already seeing a couple of major cooldowns showing up on the models for the end of the month, and we're going to dive into that, plus the potential for a massive snowstorm over the central and eastern United States, maybe even a couple of them. We do still see some general low pressure all over the place out west. So this is causing, again, Cascade and Sierra Nevada snowfall, also Rocky Mountain snowfall, and a lot of rainfall for the surrounding areas. And then, this same system is dumping a whole lot of snow across eastern Canada, dipping down into areas like the Adirondack Mountains of New York, and even into the Green Mountains and Berkshires of Vermont and Massachusetts. I'll zoom in so we can take a closer look at that. We have some snow showers again over the Adirondacks. Now, this is really light snowfall. The heavier stuff is mostly up here for Ottawa and northward into areas that, aren't as populated. This is more rural Canada, but they're getting some seriously heavy snowfall up there, especially for areas a little further north, closer to the Hudson Bay. Now, we're going to move on from this and talk about what's coming. It's time to dive into the model guidance where, again, we have major cold air and massive snow systems popping up on the models today. And as we take a look at how the past 15 days have gone, especially for areas a little further north, closer to the Hudson Bay. Now, we're going to move on from this and talk about what's coming. It's time to dive into the model guidance where, again, we have major cold air and massive snow systems popping up on the models today. And as we take a look at how the past 15 days have gone, as a low-pressure system moves inland, it's dumping incredibly heavy rain. This is definitely a big flooding concern down there. Now, as we shift our focus up towards the northern Rockies actually, more like the northern plains in eastern Montana and into the Dakotas, we have mixed precipitation showers ongoing. So the entirety of November so far, we can see a picture is kind of being painted here, with warmer conditions mostly over the western and some of the central states, with cooler conditions pretty much locked in for areas east of the Mississippi River. Whoops, I guess that's a little bit of a jump, isn't it? Let's first take a look at the storms that are on the way. I have to load this in. I don't know why I wasn't prepared today, guys. And as we take a look at this, we can see basically what we just looked at. It's very close to the coastline of Maine there, and we can see some snow showers ongoing overnight and into tomorrow morning. Also taking place tomorrow morning, we can see in the southwest that area of rainfall really expands all throughout these areas. And we end up seeing some Sierra Nevada snowfall happening as well. So, some really heavy snowfall is coming for those mountain ranges. And as we head towards Monday, we can see a couple of things are still taking place. We have, overall, a ridge over the west and that trough over the east. This pattern is mostly taking place today, tomorrow, on Sunday, and into Monday before we'll see things switch up a little bit, which we'll get to in a moment. So yeah, we've got a ton to unpack today. Let's get right to it. First things first, let's take a look at what's happening right now where we have 3 stormy regions in play, 2 major systems, and one that's a bit on the smaller side. I'm talking brutally cold temperatures and some serious snowfall potential. We're already seeing a couple of major cooldowns showing up on the models for the end of the month, and we're going to dive into that, plus the potential for a massive snowstorm over the central and eastern United States, maybe even a couple of them. are still dealing with snowfall as of Tuesday morning, and as we kind of reach into the afternoon, that just expands and gets a little bit worse. I want to take it straight towards Wednesday here on the 19th, where we do end up seeing a lot of this precipitation shift more so over the Rockies. And you have to remember, these are areas that are normally super dry. When they're dealing with heavy rainfall, think about it. If you take bone-dry dirt and try to add water to it, that dirt doesn't just soak it up right away, right? It takes some time, and that's exactly what we're seeing take place here in Southern California. I'm really concerned about this on the 20th. We end up getting a low here just to the east of the Rockies in New Mexico and Colorado. We end up getting this really nasty-looking thunderstorm area for Texas, Oklahoma, Kansas, Missouri, Arkansas, and Louisiana. And again, this is on Thursday, the 20th, and this could be a pretty big severe weather risk, so we're watching this for the middle of next week. That is going to be a really dynamic system because we have this low here, and obviously a cold front underneath this warm front. I'm really concerned about this on the 20th. We end up getting a low here just to the east of the Rockies in New Mexico and Colorado. We end up getting this really nasty-looking thunderstorm area for Texas, Oklahoma, Kansas, Missouri, Arkansas, and Louisiana. Obviously, when you mix cold and warm, you get a ton of instability. We're going to be watching for that happening here. Still, some western mountainous snowfall is occurring. Let's take this a step further towards Friday, where we do see this low transfer up to the Great Lakes. We still have that classic cold front look. We can see thunderstorms still taking place, probably in the deep south up into the Ohio Valley area. Obviously, this time of year, the further south you go, the more likely this is going to be a thunderstorm and severe weather threat. And again, this is on Thursday, the 20th, and this could be a pretty big severe weather risk, so we're watching this for the middle of next week. That is going to be a really dynamic system because we have this low here, and obviously a cold front underneath this warm front. We can see a low is just to the north there. I'll switch this to white so we can see it a little better, but it's just to the north of the UP of Michigan. And we've got some rain showers happening here, mostly for the Great Lakes and parts of the Mid-Atlantic and Northeast in the United States, way up in the very high levels of the atmosphere. And that is going to cause the polar vortex to kind of spread around and split up, and that's what can cause these major troughs, these insane Arctic blasts, and even major polar vortex events in the United States and other areas, right in the mid-latitudes. But here's the kicker, and this is what we absolutely have to keep our eyes on. This is the earliest I've ever seen what's called a sudden stratospheric warming event, which is basically a massive disruption of that polar vortex, as warmer air just crashes into it. Now, this usually happens in late December, January, or February, so for it to pop up in late November is incredibly rare. I honestly can't recall it ever happening this early. This is a major head start, and I am so curious to see what this leads to. We're talking about the possibility of some seriously wintry weather in late November to early December, which is something we absolutely need to monitor. It's been so many years since we've seen winter get a jump start like this, maybe even ever, honestly. So you know we'll be watching this fascinating situation closely. The jet stream is just laying flat across the northern states, and the storms are just following that path. We're also seeing a bit of an atmospheric river, which is funneling a ton of that precipitation up through Mexico and then aiming it straight into the deep south of the United States. So a huge chunk of our moisture is going to be sourced from that region. And yeah, that could definitely spark up some thunderstorms. All right, let's jump right into it. We're about to break down the upcoming pattern, and you'll want to stick around for this. We're looking at a major polar vortex event that's expected to hit later this month and into December, where things are about to get absolutely wild. So that wouldn't surprise me one bit. And as we watch this Arctic air move in, we'll get that polar jet up here and the southern jet down here, bringing in all that moisture. Now, what it does from there is the big question. Is it going to track like this, or is it going to shoot almost directly northward? And that's going to be critical because this is likely what would trigger a major snowfall event for late November into December, if we get one. And we're already seeing some model hints that are pointing to this area. We talked about this yesterday, but the Northern Plains, Midwest, and Great Lakes region is really the place to watch, I think, for late November. And, you know, as these two jets collide and combine, we're going to get that cold air as we get later into next week. Now, this is a little far out, so we're just going to keep monitoring it. I mean, look at Sunday the 23rd. The very next day, we see a whole lot more of this explosive thunderstorm and shower development down there. At least, that's what the models are suggesting right now. So we see a bit more of a wave in the jet stream. It's not extreme, but this is definitely a major, pretty significant trough that will bring cooler temperatures to the eastern US. As we push this forward, we see it move out. We then flip back to warmer temperatures in the east and cooler in the west with some Rocky Mountain snowfall happening. So we get pretty much the complete opposite setup here with this jet stream, with, again, a major trough in the west and a pretty major ridge in the east as we're just dealing with this back and forth pattern. And then, as we let this play out, we see those two jets finally combine right around the 29th as we have this northern jet roaring into the Rockies from the northwest. We also have that southern influence with the southern jet pumping in a ton of moisture, and this all comes together to create a pretty major system. We can already see significant snowfall starting up for parts of the Rockies and into the Central Plains, like Kansas and Nebraska. Again, this is now for the 28th into the 29th. And as we move further into the 29th, we start to see a stronger low developing over the Midwest, with heavier snowfall for parts of the Midwest, the Plains, and the Great Lakes here. And as we head through the night from Saturday, the 29th into the 30th, look at this low 995 millibars, a pretty major system over Indiana. And as we head into the night, we're seeing Missouri, Iowa, Illinois, Wisconsin, and Michigan all getting heavy snowfall on this model run. And that low eventually bombs out, just getting super intense 981 millibars over Toronto, which is just a very powerful low. We see a ton of snow in Michigan, Indiana, and the UP of Michigan here. Okay, and here's a fun little side note for you. You guys know I'm a massive football fan, right? Well, I believe Saturday the 29th is when Ohio State travels to Michigan for the game. This model run would put snow on the field in Michigan on that exact day. That would be the wildest thing I have ever seen. I just had to point that out because that thought just hit me absolutely crazy stuff if that actually happened. Now, this is the end of the model run, which does bring up the question, this is very, very far out. So I have to say it. Take this with a huge grain of salt. I know you all make fun of me for saying that, but for real, this is extremely far out. The biggest takeaway here isn't the tiny details, and I know I just got hyped about that football game, but the specifics, like where the snow falls, the exact timing, and the intensity are all things that could change dramatically. I mean, they could change completely when we're looking out 360 hours, but the bigger takeaway here is the overall pattern, the big picture stuff, like those two jet streams we were talking about that are kind of coming together at a certain point. That's the kind of takeaway we can get real value from later on in the pattern. And we can see right here on screen what would happen if they do combine, which is also a valuable piece of information. So these are all the things we need to walk away with, looking at the trends, understanding what the models are hinting at for the overall pattern. But again, the specific details are the things that are likely to change. We could see the models completely scrap this snowstorm, and they could pop up another one, let's say a few days later or a few days earlier that's totally different. But because that general pattern was similar to what the models were forecasting long range, it still supports the idea just at a different date, right? So the overall pattern is the big takeaway, not the exact timing or the nitty-gritty details. With all that said, let's take a look at the total precipitation where the west still looks to get a ton of moisture. The east is looking better and better each day with how much they're expecting, so I don't think anywhere is going to be terribly, terribly dry across the United States. I don't know why our map is all messed up today. We can't see the... Oh, here we go. This is the overall anomaly, so we can see above average precipitation out west, above average for a lot of the central states, and above average for most of the east. We do have a little pocket of dryness over the southeast and a bit for the northeast coastline. But we're talking about a fraction of an inch difference from what's typical, so nothing majorly below average is happening here. I did want to show you the GFS model as well. We don't get that major snowstorm here, but around the 21st, we do get an interesting system. Again, it's traveling in from that southern jet, and we also see the northern jet kind of pouring into that same area. This is another perfect example that the overall pattern supports those two jets coming together and creating something interesting. The only issue is we don't end up with a major snowstorm. The timing doesn't match up perfectly, but the trend, the potential is still there. And as we go a little bit further here, as we head towards the 24th and 25th, which, by the way, lines up a little closer with the European model's timing, we see another potential showdown, if you will, where the southern jet starts to make a move. The northern jet is in the neighborhood, but make no mistake, it's the one calling the shots in this scenario. And what that gives us is a more minor snowstorm for the very far northern Midwest and the Great Lakes. So again, it's not a perfect match, but that gives us two potential opportunities for something big to come together. We do in fact end up getting some snow showers on the tail end of this for the Mid-Atlantic and Northeast a little later in the pattern. And then bam! A massive trough dips down into the east, followed by another resurgence of that same trough, and this is all being driven by a warmer pattern that this model starts to show. In the west towards the end of the November, early December timeframe, that would create a positive PNA, which is the perfect recipe to funnel seriously strong cold air right into the central and eastern states. Now, speaking of snow, let's take a look at the total snowfall from the European model. And remember, the exact details aren't super critical at this point, but we could be dealing with a major snowstorm if all the pieces fall into place. We're talking maybe upwards of a foot or more of snowfall in the bullseye if a perfect system like that came together. When that southern jet links up with the northern jet, it can cause some seriously wild things to happen. We're already seeing it out in the west, and you don't have to take their forecast with a grain of salt because they are getting snow continuously. They're going to end up with feet of snowfall over the next couple of weeks. We're also looking at some snow piling up in the mountains of the Northeast on a few different occasions over the coming weeks. Now, let's switch over to the European model's temperatures. Overall, we see a wild ride, warmer than normal, then cooler than normal in the east. We bounce back to something a little bit warmer than normal, and then right back to cooler than normal, then warmer, then cooler again. We're just on a roller coaster, you get the picture. And then right here, toward the end of the pattern, the 28th, 29th, 30th, we start to see that full-on Arctic invasion begin to move in. This is from that polar vortex making its move, and it would align almost perfectly with that major polar vortex event we've been watching up in the Arctic Circle. We would expect the very end of November and the start of December to be when we feel the first impacts from that. But I gotta say, the first week or two of December is likely when we'll see the worst of it, and we're not even looking that far out yet. This model shows a major Arctic blast hitting on Sunday, the 30th, which suggests these models are forecasting this to impact us sooner rather than later in the grand scheme of things. These are definitely some pretty huge takeaways, and believe it or not, the GFS model is actually hinting at an even earlier impact from this one. So we're seeing some major Arctic air start to pour in as soon as the 26th and 27th, and it really takes over by the 28th, 29th, and 30th. And get this, as that first wave is winding down, another one is already lined up and on the way to take its place right after, back to back. We've got some really major stuff popping up on the end of these model runs, and it's all supported by what's happening around the globe. So we're going to be tracking this daily. We have exciting times ahead, guys, with lots of action-packed weather on the way. Whether it's the temperatures, or snow systems, or thunderstorms, there's just all sorts of stuff going on. So be sure to subscribe. We upload every single day. You can even hit that bell icon for daily notifications when we upload, so you never miss a thing. Be sure to like the video if you enjoyed it, leave a comment down below with your thoughts, and I'll see you guys in the next video.